Today's Muriel Driver lecturer is Dr. Isabelle Gélinas. Dr. Gélinas is an associate professor and graduate program director at the School of Physical and Occupational Therapy at McGill University. She is a renowned leader in the study of aging and its cognitive and functional manifestations. The CAOT Awards Committee recognized a close alignment between Isabelle's work, values, and strengths of character as those that embody the Muriel Driver Award. Two of Isabelle's colleagues, Laurie Schneider and Bernadette Nedley, are here to introduce Isabelle and to share with us some of the many reasons that compelled them to submit and support her Muriel Driver Award nomination. So I invite Laurie and Bernadette to the stage.
Thank you. It is such a thrill and a pleasure for me to be able to introduce to you our most wonderful Isabelle Gélinas. In her roles as educator, researcher, and accomplished clinician, Dr. Isabelle Gélinas is a leader amongst occupational therapists in the study of aging and its cognitive and functional manifestations, as was just introduced. During her 33-year career, she has distinguished herself amongst her peers. In particular, her leadership in the area of driving for seniors with cognitive impairments has placed her on an international stage. Okay, that is not what was supposed to happen. Okay, let's go back. There we go. Okay, Dr. Gélinas' research focuses on the functional outcomes of aging populations with stroke, dementia, brain injury, and schizophrenia. She is also examining patterns of social participation and performance of instrumental activities of daily living with these populations. Several projects have particularly focused on the evaluation of daily activities. Most notably, during her doctoral studies, Dr. Gélinas developed an assessment of daily living for clients with dementia titled the Disability Assessment for Dementia, and since then has continued collaborations related to the translation and use of this tool in different studies. This assessment has now been translated into 55 languages and has been used in several international pharmacological studies as an outcome measure. More recently, Dr. Gélinas has been interested in the concept of self-efficacy. She recognized that there was a need for comprehensive measurement to assess self-efficacy in relation to daily activities and participation, therefore developed the self-efficacy scale for performing life activities. Driving rehabilitation is an area of research that has gained considerable importance in recent years. Preoccupations with the identification of individuals who may be at risk for driving and can be a threat to public safety have brought to the forefront by governing agencies and decision makers in the healthcare system. The anticipated increase in the number of seniors and the prevalence of health-related conditions affecting driving in this segment of the population have been instrumental in making research in driving a national priority. However, the best practice to screen and assess driving competence have not been determined. In addition, there has been a paucity of research focused on interventions for driver training and when driving cessation is required. In response to those needs, Dr. Gélinas has collaboratively developed a research program that covered the continuum of services in driving rehabilitation from prevention to screening to intervention and driving cessation, along with other researchers from the CAN Drive team. More specifically, her projects have focused on the identification of the best practice processes for screening at-risk drivers that can be used in clinical practice, the development of instruments for the comprehensive evaluation of driving performance, as well as the development of training approaches using simulators and on-road practice, which can safely be adapted to individuals with specific requirements. As director of the Graduate Studies program at the School of Physical and Occupational Therapy at McGill University, Dr. Gélinas has been a key figure in the success of several innovative online programs. First, the Graduate Certificate Program in Driving rehabilitation, which is offered in both French and English. This 18-month online program is geared to occupational therapists interested in acquiring graduate-level training in assessing, evaluating, and retraining driving capacities. More recently, an interdisciplinary online graduate certificate program for healthcare professionals who wish to learn the latest developments in the assessment and treatment of chronic pain has been launched by Dr. Gélinas. Dr. Gélinas has also been an active member and volunteer within CAOT and the Order in Quebec. In 2010, she was the spokesperson for CAOT's National Blueprint for Injury Prevention in Older Drivers. She has received both the Award of Merit in 2004 and the Certificates of Appreciation in 2007 and 2010. She was the chair of the editorial board of the Canadian Journal of Occupational Therapy from 2001 to 2003, and she has been a member of the editorial committee for the Revue Québécoise de Ergothérapie. She has been a grant reviewer for committees for several agencies in both the provincial and national level. Most recently, she lent her expertise to the CAOT Lunch and Learn series, which was an overview of theories informing clinical practice about assessing driver risk behind the wheel, and has co-led a CIHR cafe with CAOT on how to enhance older driver safety. She has also been a member of the OEQ Bursary Committee, helping them to revamp the master's and doctoral bursary programs, as well as helping to develop the postdoctoral, clinical, and knowledge translation bursaries.
Dr. Gélinas completed her undergraduate training in occupational therapy at the Université de Montréal in 1983. At a time when very few OTs pursued graduate studies in occupational therapy, she studied at Virginia Commonwealth University, obtaining her MSc in occupational therapy in 1985. Her PhD in rehabilitation sciences at McGill University followed in 1995, supported by a doctoral studentship from the Alzheimer's Society of Canada. Her doctoral thesis, entitled Disability Assessment in Dementia of the Alzheimer's Type, led to a decade of innovative contributions related to identification, measurement, and evaluation in the functional status of this important group. Dr. Gélinas began her career as a clinician, working with clients with physical disabilities in Montreal. She joined the Constance Lethbridge Rehabilitation Center in 1985 as chargée de formation pratique for the University of Montreal. Beginning her academic career at McGill University in 1990, she was promoted through the academic ranks, reaching associate professor in 2005. The impact of Dr. Gélinas' research is illustrated by the number and diversity of her publications in occupational therapy, rehabilitation science, geriatrics, and mental health. Her many research accomplishments are recognized by 80 peer-reviewed publications, 6 book chapters, 152 conference presentations in English and in French, 66 invitations to present her work provincially, nationally, and internationally, and more than $5 million in funding for research, either as principal or co-investigator. Dr. Gélinas has built a program of research dedicated to the discovery of the most important influences on participation during aging and how to address these factors through occupational therapy intervention. She is a respected collaborator and a real team player. Dr. Gélinas enjoys a wonderful reputation amongst her students, both as a teacher and a supervisor. In addition to addressing the increasing professional demands for teaching occupational therapy intervention in geriatrics, she has been a guest lecturer at the schools of rehabilitation at both the Université de Montréal and the Université de Sherbrooke. As the director of the graduate program in rehabilitation science at McGill, she has helped to assure a high-quality educational environment and is an exceptional role model. Many of her students received awards either for their research design, conference presentations or publications, and at least 2 have continued in academic careers as educators and researchers. So we asked ourselves, how did Isabelle Gélinas come to become the seriously wonderful person that she is? In her earliest days, by all accounts, she was a thriving, self-regulated baby who brought joy to her parents and to her family. She showed early signs of her future talents as an occupational therapist, shown here practicing her feeding skills on her baby sister, Martine, who incidentally became a physical therapist. But that's a whole other story. She integrated seamlessly into summer camp in Ontario, making friends and forging alliances. Quite a feat for a francophone kid from Montreal, and evidence of her early strengths as a collaborator. Interestingly, in our search, we found Isabelle and the ergos of Centre Hospitalier Saint-Georges rocking their 80s hair. She found lasting happiness with her husband, Francis Perrault, also rocking his 80s hair. And together they share 2 beautiful daughters, Julie and Gabrielle, with whom they travel through life and occasionally the world. She has remarkable colleagues and friends. And once, only once, more than 25 years ago, she and Lily Liu slipped away from a conference and ended up at the Boston Museum of Fine Art, playing hooky, but only once. With this winning combination of attributes, experience, and blessings, Isabelle has achieved a large and far-ranging impact, not only in her own profession of occupational therapy for her research, education, and professional activities, but in the fields of neuroscience and aging. Her contributions to our profession through new discovery, publication, teaching, and mentorship continue to improve understanding of health issues for aging populations and to change approaches in assessment and treatment of elders with special needs in an evidence way. Chers collègues, invités d'honneur, mesdames, messieurs, mes amis, c'est avec grand plaisir et fierté que je vous présente Isabelle Gélinas pour le discours commémoratif Muriel Driver.
Thank you, Laurie and Bernadette. This was such a touching introduction. It really, really meant a lot to me. Chers collègues et amis, dear colleagues and friends, c'est un privilège et un honneur pour moi de donner ce discours commémoratif en hommage aux importantes contributions de Muriel Drivers à la profession. It's a privilege and an honor for me to give this year's lectureship in memorial to Muriel Drivers' important contributions to the profession. Merci à l'Association canadienne des ergothérapeutes de m'avoir remis ce prix si prestigieux. Je voudrais aussi remercier mes chers collègues et amis de l'École de physiothérapie et d'ergothérapie de l'Université McGill qui me supportent continuellement. Je me sens très privilégiée d'être parmi un groupe si talentueux d'ergothérapeutes qui sont si innovatrices, si collégiales et qui sont des chefs de file dans la profession. Je suis également reconnaissante à mes collègues des autres programmes et de la communauté clinique ainsi que mes étudiants avec qui il est si agréable de faire de multiples collaborations sur différents projets de recherche, mais aussi différents projets cliniques. Et plus particulièrement, j'aimerais remercier ma famille, mon mari Francis et nos 2 belles filles que vous avez pu voir sur les diapositives, qui me donnent un support constant et sans qui je n'aurais pu faire tout ce que j'ai fait au cours des années. Donc, un gros merci. Preparing for this lecture allowed me to reflect back on my journey in the profession from my graduation with a BSc in occupational therapy from Université de Montréal, followed by a master's degree in Virginia Commonwealth University, to working in driving evaluation program at the Constance Lethbridge Rehabilitation Center in Montreal before I pursued my doctoral degree and finally took on a position in the School of Physical and Occupational Therapy at McGill University. While working in driving rehabilitation, I developed a passion for this very specialized area of practice. Although some colleagues found this work to be quite technical and limited in scope, I was attracted to this field due to the possibilities of expanding the occupational therapist's role and contribution in order to better support our clients who were faced with mobility challenges, which had an important impact on their ability to fulfill their daily activities and participate in meaningful activities. I believe that the turning point which influenced the trajectory of my career was the collaboration that I had with occupational therapy researchers. These encounters allowed me to broaden my perspective and practice and opened up new possibilities. Let me illustrate what I mean. At the time, the occupational therapy practice in driving assessment was very disparate. Clinicians were feeling very isolated in their work and were questioning whether they were using the right tools and procedures. Through an initiative from one of the research milieu who had a research team working in collaboration with occupational therapists in driving, there was a meeting organized. All of the occupational therapists and researchers in the field of driving rehabilitation in the province were invited to review procedures and instruments that were used in an effort to harmonize practice. The combined expertise of the clinical practitioners who had experiential knowledge about using instruments with different clientele, and the researchers who provided scientific evidence on the latest driving tool to assess the driving performance really helped help us organize and review what was done at the time in the field. This led to an harmonization of practice in the province and the creation of a working group that would meet regularly to discuss practice issues in driving rehabilitation. This really transformed our practice and our confidence that we were using at the time the measures and procedures based on the best evidence available. This positive collaboration empowered us and led us to contact the licensing body responsible for delivering licenses to drivers with a medical condition, and led to the development of a form that has since been used by all occupational therapists when it comes time to make a determination of fitness to drive based on evaluation in the clinical milieu. Such forms already existed for other professionals, such as the medical doctors of ophthalmologists, but not for OTs, who were an important role in the process towards determining fitness to drive. My professional role has changed since then, and as an educator and a researcher, I've continued to be involved in many collaborations with occupational therapists in the clinical milieu that have led to changes in practice. I must say that these collaborations, especially when they're initiated from the clinicians, have been the most stimulating and enjoyable experiences for me. I believe that these partnerships in occupational therapy between clinicians and researchers are important to advance knowledge relevant to clinical practice and support evidence-based practice in the profession. These collaborations can allow us to reach higher summits, which is very much in line with this year's conference theme. So partnership in occupational therapy research will therefore be the focus of this lecture. First, I will discuss why we should support engagement in research for clinical practitioners and highlight some of the challenges involved Okay. Highlight some of the challenges involved in research. I will then review the essential conditions and principles required for successful collaboration in research. I will address also some of the benefits of working collaboratively in research and show how occupational therapists have contributed to this collaboration to the development of knowledge and practice in driving rehabilitation. This topic is, I believe, very timely, since there's an increased emphasis in our profession on the use of evidence-based practice and the role of the scholarly practitioner. The competency role of scholarly practitioner is essential for our profession and pertains to all aspects of practice. As described in the 2012 Profile of Practice of Occupational Therapists in Canada, scholarly practitioners incorporate critique, reflection, and quality improvement in their everyday practice and through lifelong learning. Continually reflecting and questioning the way we practice and the available evidence is central for a scholarly practice and is critical to enhance the profession and to position us as agents of change in the different contexts of practice. Scholarly practitioner is identified in the Enabling Occupation 2 book as one of the roles that is a foundation for all enablement skills. This role may take on different forms depending on the practice context and may involve researching and critically appraising different types of evidence to support practice, analyzing information collected as part of clinical practice to answer a clinical question, assisting with the translation of new knowledge for uptake into clinical practice, or contributing to the generation of new knowledge through research activities. Despite the efforts of association, professional bodies, and scholars in occupational therapy to enhance evidence-based practice and involvement in scholarship practice, this remains difficult for many clinicians. Clinicians are often faced with limited time and resources to devote to these activities. It has been suggested by several prominent scholars in occupational therapy that one way for clinicians to get involved in scholarship practice is to collaborate in research projects with researchers. This collaborative partnership has been suggested as a mechanism to address the barriers that prevent clinicians from engaging in scholarly activity and can have several advantages for all practitioners in occupational therapy, clients, and other stakeholders. One of the proposed advantages is that through collaborating in research, clinicians can learn new skills that will enable them to be more competent in critically appraising the findings from the literature and in applying those in practice to have a more evidence-based practice. Another compelling argument for establishing collaborative partnership between clinicians and researchers is that in order for research findings to be integrated and utilized in clinical practice, the literature demonstrates that it has to be relevant and meaningful for clinical practitioners and their clients. Researchers in occupational therapy have been conducting research projects for many years, but the findings are difficult to implement in clinical practice. Several authors in the occupational therapy literature have stated that combining the expertise and knowledge from researchers and clinicians may result in more relevant research, questions, and findings for clinical practice. This may help close the gap that is often found between theory and practice. This concept of scholarship of practice, elaborated by more than a decade ago, was based on the assumptions that knowledge users must collaborate with scholars in its development. These partnerships can enhance the validity and the credibility of the research conducted in occupational therapy by focusing on projects that directly correspond to issues coming from practice. Unfortunately, there are still very few clinicians who are involved in research activities, despite the fact that there is an effort from the profession to provide support and that the educational programs at the professional levels include some research training. Maya Larson and colleague mentioned that participating in research activities is still quite mysterious for many clinicians, and they feel intimidated by the whole process and their perceived lack of knowledge and skills. These authors view collaborative partnership as a mechanism to help demystify this process. Some clinicians may value spending their time between clinical practice and research activities, but are experiencing challenges in maintaining occupational balance, as they might feel out of control if the research is not valued, or if they're not able to commit enough time to perform the activity to a satisfactory level for them. While some of the challenges to involvement in research are situated more predominantly at the level of the clinicians, others are found more at the level of the environment or the research activity. At the level of the environment, several administrative and structural barriers can have a negative impact on the involvement of clinicians in research. These include lack of support from the clinical organizations for spending time in research because of the priority given to the delivery of clinical services and the expectations for productivity. Organizations that are faced with less resources and financial constraint will be less likely to dedicate resources to research activities. Also, access to researchers may be limited due to geographical distances. In addition, the different mandates and expectations of the clinicians and researchers institutions may create barriers to collaborative relationships between the two. The nature of the project that interests the clinician may also create various challenges depending on the complexity of the questions. It may be difficult to find a balance of expertise that will help and address the question that is raised. Involvement in research is also often time-consuming and occurs over a long period of time. Thus, results may not be obtained right away for use in clinical practice. Most importantly, the relevance of the question research for clinical practice may be questioned. Collaborating partnership in OT research is being suggested as a solution to alleviate the challenges preventing clinicians from participating in research activities and to facilitate research initiatives that are conducted from the viewpoint of the practitioners and thus more relevant to clinical practice. But how can we foster this partnership? Comment pouvons-nous faciliter ce partenariat? Information from the literature within and outside the profession can help us understand the elements that should be considered for effective collaborating partnerships in research. Matisic and colleagues define collaboration as a mutually beneficial, well-defined relationship entered into by two or more organizations to achieve common goals. The relationship includes a commitment to mutual relationships and goals, a jointly developed structure and shared responsibility, mutual authority and accountability for success, and sharing of resources and rewards. Based on an extensive review of available evidence, they identified 20 factors that have strong influence on collaboration. These can be grouped under 6 categories, which include the environment and social context, the characteristic of partners, both individual and organization, the process and structure of the management of the collaboration and making decisions, the channels of communication, the purpose of the collaboration, and the resource needed and available to sustain the collaboration. Thompson and colleagues identified collaboration as an important skill and role for scholarly practice. They indicate that to collaborate is to work together, especially in a joint and intellectual effort or toward a common end by sharing talents and ability in mutual respect with genuine interest, acknowledgement of others, empathy, altruism, trust, and creative communications to achieve results that are greater than the sum of individual efforts. Power sharing and working with is viewed as an important element to a successful collaboration. Foss and colleague, in a model adapted from the work of Paul Witka, identified pre-partnership conditions and 9 guiding principles necessary for the development and sustainability of partnerships. The pre-partnership condition focused on environmental factors at the social, political, and economic level, factors related to partnering institution, and the characteristic of the task that will be realized by the partners. Principles related to having vision, values, and common goals, demonstrating mutual respect and trust, building on strength, sharing equal powers, using clear and open communication, co-developing roles and norms, interacting to improve the partnership, sharing successes, and finally recognizing that the partnerships evolve over time. Scholars in the occupational therapy literature have looked at collaborative practice in occupational therapy research. 2 conceptual frameworks have been proposed to explain and provide an understanding of the collaborative process between clinicians and researchers. DePoy and Gallagher developed the colleague model of collaborative investigation, which describes the collaborative process in 7 stages, from the identification of shared research interests to taking time to understand each of the partners' expectations and skills to determine roles, to jointly planning the research and negotiating the responsibility of each of the collaborators, to the implementation of the project, its completion with the analysis of the finding and its dissemination, to finally the evaluation of strengths and limitation of the project to plan for future collaborations. Suarez, Balcazar, and colleagues recognize the value of partnerships between clinicians and researchers to tackle complex practice problems. The authors presented the framework of university community partnership for scholarship and practice, which includes 7 principles, some of which are similar to those proposed by Foss and collaborators. Their framework also includes principles focusing on developing reciprocal learning opportunities, using a multi-method approach to scholarship and practice, and respecting diversity and building cultural competency. The author also stresses the importance of taking time to understand the partners and their environment in the initial phase of the partnership, while initiating first contact with the partners. They indicate that the partnership should result in an outcome that has tangible benefit for the partners. Although the conceptualization of partnership in the literature is somewhat different depending on the authors and their perspectives, similar elements emerge as important for building and sustaining a successful and meaningful research partnership between clinicians and researchers to obtain findings that are relevant for clinical practice and our stakeholders. Based on the work cited in the literature and from my own experience in research collaborations with clinicians, I would like to highlight key conditions and guiding principles that should be considered in collaborative partnership in research. They will be presented according to 3 stages of the collaborative process. First, before entering into the partnership, when the presence of favorable preconditions should be evaluated. Second, during the partnership, when necessary guiding principles should be followed to develop and support the collaboration. And third, at the end, with the outcome of the partnership. I will use 2 case